Hi, I'm Nicolás Saldías. I'm a senior analyst at the Economist Intelligence Unit and a senior fellow at CESCOS. According to our index, one of the biggest problems that the region faces is a poor political culture. Many of the countries in the region have a population that has low confidence in the institutions of democracy, and also a number of countries where people feel that other forms of democracy are preferable, including the rule of military in the government. Um, what's interesting about the index is that it also shows that formal institutions of democracy are actually quite strong in the region. So this is a big threat because it really puts into question whether or not these formal institutions can survive in a context where political culture, democratic political culture that is quite weak. And we're seeing this in a number of countries in the region, such as Peru and Ecuador, El Salvador, where you have serious political and social challenges that are leading to an erosion of democratic quality. And so I would say that this is the biggest problem the region faces. And why is there such a low level of trust and faith in democratic institutions? Because of a high level of inequality in a number of the countries, poor economic growth, and also high levels of poverty. And compounding this more recently is a growing salience of crime in a number of countries in the region. And a threat to democracy in the region is exactly how to deal with the problem of crime. And we see in the case of El Salvador, for example, the Bukele, Nayib Bukele, who's the president of El Salvador, he is presenting the region with a undemocratic but yet popular way of dealing with crime, which is a serious threat to democracy in the entire region. The region is experiencing a democratic backsliding. An authoritarian wave is beginning to grow. Like I stated earlier, we see the example of Nayib Bukele in El Salvador, which is presenting an authoritarian response to what is otherwise a complicated social and political problem. In other countries in the region, such as El Salvador, you're seeing the emergence of a crime wave, which is putting at threat the democratic stability of that country as well. As we've seen recently, a number of high-level politicians in the country have actually been assassinated. The same is also true of Mexico to a degree, where you see a number of politicians also being assassinated by organized crime. And then in Peru, you also see the emergence of a process of democratic backsliding. And so I would say the region is facing a number of problems when it comes to authoritarian slash populist movements that are offering the population simple solutions to complicated problems. In order to address the problem of authoritarianism is complicated. It requires that there is a concerted effort by politicians and the society at large to deal with the fundamental underlying problems facing these societies, such as social exclusion, discrimination, inequality, poverty, and at the same time fomenting economic growth. So to give people the opportunity to increase their living standards, and to also give the opportunity of social mobility, which is a significant problem in this region, how to share the gains of growth. Um, Another thing that needs to be done in the region, which is a big challenge in order to deal with the question of democracy and avoiding authoritarianism, is that the region needs to cooperate more. The countries in the region need to have a much more regional approach to a number of these problems, especially the problem of organized crime. You can't really deal with the problem of organized crime on your own because these are transnational crime networks that don't respect borders. They don't respect the local police. They don't respect the military. They only respect one thing, and that is the ability to make money. And so it's important for the region to work together, to build institutions together that actually share information, share intelligence, to allow for a more efficient way of dealing with this problem. And I think that's the biggest challenge, in my opinion, that this region faces in terms of avoiding further democratic backsliding. In order for the democracies in the region to have a prosperous future, people need to have confidence in these institutions. And how to build that confidence varies by country. There's no magic solution to that question. Some countries are bedeviled by high levels of corruption, and creating a more transparent and strong judicial system, for example, would go a long way to building that trust. Making sure that even powerful people are held accountable for what they've done in terms of corruption, and other potential crimes. And we are seeing this in the region. There are examples of powerful people who are facing, in serious investigations regarding corruption, and even some convictions. In Argentina, for example, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner was recently convicted of corruption, actually. So it's important to ensure that the institutions of the judiciary in the region are strengthened as much as possible and also made as independent as possible. Creating trust in institutions also is very difficult because it's a time-consuming process. And so it means that there has to be a broad political consensus as much as possible to bring all political parties on board with these fundamental reforms. Because it's very difficult to gain trust and it's very easy to lose it. So it's a potentially decades-long process to actually build that trust in the institutions. So there has to be a concerted effort by the major political parties to ensure that they follow some basic guidelines on how to actually improve the quality of their democracies over time. So the future of democracy in Latin America varies. There are some countries where democracy is actually quite solid. In the 2022 index, for example, Uruguay actually became the most democratic country in the Americas this year. So there is an exemplary case, shall we say, of democracy functioning in Latin America. But you also have other full democracies in Latin America. You have Chile and Costa Rica, for example, which have strong institutions and a strong tradition of respecting civil rights and also a strong tradition of respecting elections. Other countries in the region, I think, are struggling to avoid the populist trap, like Argentina, for example. Right now, you have an election coming up where there's a potential for populists on the left or the right to win. And so why is that? Well, the country is facing a number of interlocking crises that I was discussing earlier, which include the economic crisis and rising levels of poverty. And populist solutions do not augur well for the future of democracy in countries, because what they do is they actually erode institutions over time in order to get what the politicians want them to do for them. And then there are other countries in the region, such as El Salvador, which are clearly on a path towards authoritarianism. Although it may have elections, so it's not a full dictatorship, it's clear that basic human rights in the country are being violated. And other countries in the region, which have weak political parties and also interlocking problems of poor economic growth and high levels of crime, are really at risk of falling into authoritarianism, such as Ecuador and Peru. These countries to pay attention to. And finally, you have outright authoritarian regimes in the region, dictatorships such as Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, where the struggle for democracy is alive and well, but it is facing a number of challenges that will make it very difficult for these countries to escape the authoritarian trap that they find themselves in. But there's always hope that they can do it.